Hello, my name is Chris Bailey and welcome to another exciting Blender tutorial. Today we're going to be making this really cool computer monitor. Okay, so first I'm going to start by modeling the keyboard. So let's select the default cube here and I'm going to hit tab to go into edit mode. So I'm going to grab this, I'm going to grab Z and bring it right down like this. And I'm just going to get the general shape of my keyboard. So I'm going to grab X and I'll bring it out. That's going to be pretty good. Let's see. I'm also going to taper it. So I'm going to switch to edge mode and I'll grab this front edge and I'll hit G and Z to lock it on the Z and I'll just bring it right down. So now I've got this nice tapered pattern here for my keyboard. Now, what I want to do now is think about how I'm going to make these keys. Now, there's a lot of ways we could do this, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this whole thing and I'm going to use Control R to create a loop cut. I'm going to roll my mouse wheel and that will create a bunch of these yellow segments you can see that are creating different loop cuts that are going to segment this mesh out into a bunch of different shapes. I'll just roll it until I've got a fair amount and then click and I'll hit escape there and I've got all of my objects looking good. Now I'm way off my origin point. See that little yellow dot? That's the origin of my mesh. It's way off over here and I'm kind of down below it. So I'm going to fix that. Exit edit mode by hitting tab. I'm going to go up here to object, set origin, and I'm going to set my geometry to the origin, which means I'm going to move all my geometry to wherever the origin is. So it's at the origin here of my scene. I'll click this. You see it just moves the mesh and centers it up around this point. Let's go back into edit mode and let's make some more loop cuts. Now I'm going to do Control R and I'm going to put a cut. Let's actually, so that they're evenly spaced, I'll do a couple of cuts like this. Let's see, that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 cuts. And I'll click there and hit escape. And that will sort of release the selection so it doesn't move it. It'll slide it up and down, but if you hit escape, it just moves it. It lets it sit in the center. Now I've got a bunch of keys. Now what I'm gonna do is switch to face mode and I wanna select as many keys as I want for the different sections. So I want to select all these squares that are on the top of my mesh here. I don't want to select anything else. So in order to do that, I'm going to look at everything from the top down view. So I can just click on this Z here to switch to my top down perspective. Now if I drag a box around all this, it will select all those faces, but because I'm not in transparent mode, which is this little button up here, it won't select anything that isn't visible. So now you can see all these guys are not selected. So now I can jump back up to Z to look at this thing with the top-down view. Now I'm gonna deselect the squares that I don't want to make keys out of. And we're gonna have just the squares selected that we wanna use to make keys. And that way we can extrude them all at once and save time by doing it in one big hit. I'm gonna hold down Shift to deselect, and I'm gonna deselect a couple of these. So now I've got all the keys that I wanna have extruded. I've got them all set up. I think I wanna inset all of these. Now inset's a great tool for taking a face and making another face that's within it that's smaller. I can come over here. I think it's, let's see, there it is right here. The Inset Faces tool is this one. You can also just hit I on your keyboard. When I start moving my mouse after doing I, you see it's gonna inset everything, but it's doing it as like one big chunk. What I can do though is when I click, I'll just inset it in a little bit and then click. I'll get this little drop down. You can't see it because my face is in the way. So let me move me out of the way. And I'm just gonna pull up Inset Faces. And we've got a bunch of options here. So we've got this boundary, offset even, offset relative. And what we could do is tick this one right here, individual. And that will allow each of these inset faces to individually go in as opposed to all going in as one big group. It's really good for modeling something like this. I can drop this down. And now what I can do is I can hit E to extrude and I can grab it up, or we can just grab it up as is. And I might just grab it up as is, I think. So I'll hit G to grab and Z and I'll pull them up. And boom, there we go. I've got a bunch of cool keys for my super awesome mechanical keyboard. Looking great. They're not quite square, but that's all right. We could always like scale up the whole thing on the Y if I want to square these out later. I think that's pretty good. Now let's do the spacebar. So I'll just shift select these like so, and I'll hit I to inset and I'll go in a little bit. I'll click. And this time I want to come to Inset Faces and turn off individual. And now you can see it's going to inset it as one big one. So I can hit grab Z and bring it up. Just kind of make sure it looks like it's relatively the same height. Okay, cool. So now we're going to get rid of the geometry that we don't need. So I'm going to hold down the Alt key and I'll click on one of these edges and this will select an entire loop of faces here for me. I can also hit C to go to my brush selection and grab these ones on the side, rolling my mouse wheel there just to change the size of my brush. And then I can hit X to delete those faces. I can hold down Alt and select that group, X to delete faces again. And we can hold down Alt and we'll grab this group here. So you can see it like which direction it creates that loop is based on which edge you click on. If you click on one of the top or bottom edges, it does the loop like this. The left and right edges does the loop long ways like that. So I'm going to shift select and grab all of those, X, delete those faces, and then Alt click this one as well and delete those faces. We want to fill this out. So what I can do is switch to edge mode and I can hold down Alt. That will select all of these edges. If I deselect this outer edge here, so I can go to my brush selection and Shift and just deselect that one and this one. I now have these two lines basically, and I want to bridge them, right? So I'm going to fill the space in between them. So I can go F3 and I can bridge edge loops, and that will bridge that connection there for me. I could also keep these selected and use something like grid fill and just drag the values around until grid fill looks right. There's a couple ways of filling something like that out, but that's a pretty simple way to do it. All right, cool. So now we've got our keyboard. Let's go ahead and make these keys square. So we'll take the whole thing, hit A to select all in edit mode. And then we're going to S to scale and Y, and we can just drag it out a bit until everything gets nice and square. There we go. It looks pretty good. So there's a bit of overhang. So I'm just going to go into edit mode, hold down Alt, and I will switch to face mode and click there, and that will select that loop of faces. And I can hit E to extrude. Now what I want to do is actually scale it out, but I don't want to scale it up and down, right? Because look, if I hit escape, it's still there. So we've extruded it, but now the faces are like on top of each other. They're the same spot. So now if I'd hit S to scale, you can see if I scale a lot, it's scaling. See how it looks sunken down? Like it's scaling up and out, but I don't want to do that upscale. So if I Control Z to undo, hit S, and then hold down Shift and hit Z, it's going to lock it on the X and Y plane. You can do this with anything from scaling to, moving, rotating. You can turn off one channel by holding down Shift. So now you can see it stays flat as I go out. So I'm just going to go up a little bit, maybe scale Y a touch on that. Great. We've got our stylized keyboard. Now, in order to make it look nice, we need to bevel every single edge. And the easiest way to do that is just to use a modifier. So let's come up here and add the bevel modifier to our keyboard. Now we want to change the amount. Scroll down Shift as I drag just to change the amount a tiny bit. And now you can see these nice little bevels and keys look really, really good. All right, let's make a little chord, and then we're going to make our monitor. So I'm going to go Shift A. We're going to use a curve for the chord. So I'll grab a Bezier. Now nothing will appear at first, and that's because it's actually hiding inside our keyboard. Because remember, whatever you create is always created at the location of your 3D cursor. So let me see. I'll just grab this guy on the Y. So G, Y, and we can pull him out. There it is. Can rotate Z, so R and Z, and let's just rotate it around a little bit and grab Y, bring it out. There we go. And what we can do is just take this curve. We can go into edit mode to change these guys a little bit, rotating them on the Z. So you get a nice little curve like this. And then we can click on the curve tab right here. And then what we can do is we can go to geometry, and then we can scroll down to geometry, and we can change the extrude value. The depth. Depth is what we want for this. So if I bring the depth up, it's going to make it like a little tube, nice little wire. And there we go, looks good. All right, let's do an old school CRT monitor because I was born in the 80s and I like a good CRT. So let's go ahead and Shift A. We're gonna create a new mesh. We're gonna create a cube and we'll pull it back. So G and Y, we're gonna come back like this, S to scale, Z to lock it on the Z, and we'll bring it right down. And this will be the base of our monitor. Let's go into edit mode. And I'm going to go to face mode, select that top face, and we're going to hit I to inset, and we can just go in a little bit just to inset in on that base, and then E to extrude, and then G to grab, and Z will come up like this. And what we're going to do is hit E again, and S to scale, and this is going to be, I'll grab and Z, I'll come up a little bit like this. And then I'm going to scale this one out on the X. So S and X just to come out. So it's sort of wider than it is. Its depth is narrower than its width. So I'm going to hit E to extrude again, grab and Z, and we're going to come up to make the monitor itself a nice big chunky square monitor. I'm going to grab the back. I'm going to hit E to extrude, S to scale. You can see that's very similar to an inset, extruding and then scaling. That's basically the similar thing. So grab Y. Come back. I could have used inset there. There's no reason to use scale necessarily. And I'll scale that down. Nice, big chunky back. And let's see. What we need to do now is select the face of the screen. And we're going to inset, and then we're going to create a little sort of beveled monitor. So hit I to inset, and we'll just go in. And now it's not insetting evenly across the whole thing, right? So I can now S to scale and Z, and just kind of bring it down till it looks like the edges are roughly the same. Now let's go in with the monitor. So E to extrude, G to grab, and Y, and we'll bring it in a touch, just like that, maybe a little bit more. And then what we want to do is we're going to inset again. So I to inset, bring it in, scale Z, bring it in, and then grab Y and bring this forward a touch. Okay, so this is going to kind of bring the monitor out. So I'm going to leave edit mode here, and I'm going to come over here. I feel like it needs to be a little bit bigger. It feels like our monitor's too small next to the keyboard. So I'm going to enter edit mode, select all, and S to scale. I could also just do that here in this mode as well. There's no reason to do it just in edit mode. If we go into edit mode, let's select this face, and I'm going to hit Control and plus on my number keypad, which expands my selection by one row. And now I'm going to hit P, and I'm going to separate by selection. So P separates objects out. So now I've got two different objects. I've got my monitor and I've got the screen itself. Now with this one selected, with the screen itself, I can right click and click Shade Smooth. I'm going to go into edit mode for my screen, and I'm going to hit F3 and type in Subdivide. And that's going to create more edges. And I can turn this up, so we can come over here and click, turn up, get a few more. And then I can click this center vertex right here. And I'm going to turn on my proportional editing. And if I hit G to grab and Y, I can bring this forward and roll my mouse wheel to extend things out. And you can see that it enables me to kind of have this fall off to what I'm doing. So I'm bringing this forward, so we create this nice rounded screen effect, which looks really cool. Now, if you're being able to see the edge of that, what you can do is go to transparent mode, hold down Alt and select that loop around the end, turn off proportional editing, and then just hit G and Y to just drag it back a bit so that it's definitely within your computer screen. And it's nice and concealed there. Now we can also take this, and I might add a subdivision surface modifier just to round it out even more. And that's going to give me a really nice look, I think. Now I am seeing things through, so I'm going to go into edit mode, and I'm going to take my final loop there, turn the transparent mode so you can see it, and I'll hit E to extrude and S to scale. And I'm just going to scale it up a bit, and that will kind of fill out this space so that it isn't visible through my monitor. Last but not least, we got to have a little mouse. So let's just create a mouse. I'm going to hit Shift A, Mesh, Cube, grab X, bring it right over here, scale Z, scale X, grab X, bring it right next to my keyboard, scale it down a little bit more, go into edit mode, and I'm going to take the center of it here. I'm going to do Control R to create a loop cut, bring this forward, and I will select the top face. I'll hit S and X just to kind of taper it in. And then I want to make some buttons. So I'm going to do Control R to do another loop cut, click right down the middle, hit Escape so it just stays in the center. And then I can select these two guys as buttons. I can hit I to inset and inset in a little bit. And again, with the drop-down menu, select individual and grab Z to bring them up just like so. And then I can grab these guys, and let's inset this as well. But instead of individual, let's just do this as one big chunk, and we'll bring that up. There we go. We've got a nice little mouse. Might scale it on the Y a little bit. And we can add some bevels to this. So let's add in a bevel modifier and change the amount of that bevel. And I can just take my chord, Shift D to duplicate, grab X and bring it right over here, go into edit mode and grab this one. And I can grab and Shift Z to lock it on the XY and just line it up with the front of the mouse there. And then what I can do is I can rotate on the Z here, hit E to extrude, grab X, and just bring that in like so, maybe out to the back of the computer. So grab Y like this, and then this one I might rotate Z, and hit S to scale, grab Y, just to get that curve to feel right. And if that's a bit too chunky for a mouse cable, we can come here to the modifiers for the curve tab. So under the depth option, we can just take this and I can hold down Shift and just drag that down. I'm going to create a little table for this. So Shift A, plane, and scale up, grab Z so that it lines up with the bottom of all of our objects, and just set that up. And let's jump into a camera. I'm going to lock my camera to view. So open the little side menu, click lock camera to view, and I can just adjust my view here, just like so. Get that nice and lined up. And now what we can do is switch over to Eevee and rendered view. And I'm going to go ahead and delete this little light that we've got here. So we've got a clean slate. I'm going to go Shift A, and we're going to add in a sun lamp, and I'll just hit R to rotate and just rotate over a little bit, maybe rotate Z some like this, and then Shift D to duplicate that sun lamp, and RZ, bring it around the other way, and just kind of adjust it till you get some nice light. And then what we can do is come to our camera, and let's go down to a viewport display and turn up pathbar 2, which is this section right here. That'll darken the outside edges of our frame so we can focus on our image. Now, once this is all good to go, I might scale that desk up a touch more and also just gonna get my framing a bit nicer on my camera. Now, this is kind of like a blocky, chunky thing, so it might be fun if we set this to an orthographic view mode. Orthographic means there's no perspective, so it's sort of that isometric world look. So what I can do is come over to my camera tab, and right up here at the top under type, I can switch this to orthographic. Now, zooming and stuff with the camera isn't going to work. I've got to use this orthographic scale value to determine how it's going to be positioned. So I can do that and zoom this out until we've got a nice thing, and I might scale my ground up so it fills the frame. Okay, cool. I'm going to turn off all of my widgets and handles and stuff, and I'm also going to get out of my lock camera to view mode by turning it off here. And now I can just zoom in, and that will make my view a bit bigger around the object. And then I can grab and swing this out and go up to the top left and swap this over to the shader editor. So I'll grab the keyboard, I'll just call this keyboard. So I'll select the plane that's my floor, and I'll click new to create a new material under the materials tab. And I'll just set a basic color here. I'll just maybe make it a bit of a darker color. And then I'll select my keyboard. I'm gonna call it keyboard, which I've already done. And I'll take my monitor, click new, and I'll call this monitor. And then the screen itself, I'll select the screen, click new, type screen. And my mouse, I'll click that, click new, type, actually I'll give mouse the same as keyboard. So I'll just get this drop down menu and select keyboard. And then the cables, so I'll select that and I'll call this cord. And I'll grab my other cord and I will call it cord as well. Okay, great. So let's start off with the keyboard and the monitor. Let's get this thing looking right. So I'm gonna bring this down, maybe a bit of a gray color. And what'd be cool is if the keys were a different color from the keyboard itself, but let's get the overall plastic look right. So I'm gonna come in like this, zoom in a little bit to see. I'm also gonna go over to my render engine tab, and I'm gonna turn on ambient occlusion, bloom, and screen space reflections. There we go. Now I'm gonna come over here and I will play with these values. So let's turn the roughness up a bit and the specular up a touch as well. And that should be pretty good. I'm gonna go into edit mode, turn on my handles again, or my widget so I can actually see stuff. And I want to select the keys, but I don't want to have the keyboard selected. So everything that's kind of down here. So let me show you a great way to do that. What we could do is with this outer group selected, so you can hold down Alt again and select that, hit Control plus. That'll select that next ring in, and then we can just Shift select these guys to add them to our selection. Okay, there we go. And oh, that one right up there. There, so that's everything selected, except for the bottom of the keyboard, which is, don't worry about that, it's underneath. So with all these guys selected, I actually want to put a different material on these guys. So I'm gonna come over here and I'm gonna hit the plus sign to add a new material to this object. So I have two materials, click new, to create that material, and then I need to click assign. Clicking assign will assign the material to whatever's selected, basically. So we've got that group selected here. And I'll select this mouse and I will do a similar thing. I'm gonna grab the buttons, I think, Control plus, and I actually wanna invert this. So I don't wanna have these selected, I wanna have the rest of it selected. So I can go up to the select menu and click invert, and that will deselect those guys and select everything else. So I can swap this material. I can click plus to create a new material slot for this object. Instead of clicking new, I can just select the one that I want. So I can go for, let's see, is it material 2, I think? Let's see, yep, material 2. So I'll go back to edit mode and click assign, and it will assign it to those guys. Lovely. All right, great. Now I'm gonna click my monitor, and I want my monitor to be glowing and like really nice and green, like a classic, old school computer. So I'm gonna go to my green here, maybe a bit of a yellowish green, just pick a good color. Turn this right up, and I'm doing it in the emission color slot. An emission basically emits light into the scene. So as I turn this up, if we've got bloom turned on, which we do right here, we're gonna get this nice bloomy haze, which looks really, really cool. So there we go, we've got our green computer monitor, and we've got our nice CRT here. Jump back into my camera, turn off everything here. Actually thinking I don't wanna do orthographic. Now that I'm looking at it, I'm gonna switch my camera back to perspective. And I'm going to jump into the camera view lock mode. And I'm going to change my focal length. I'm going to drag it out to like 24, I think. Maybe even more than that. Let's go kind of zany. Let's go like a 17 or something. And I'll get a nice view here where we can see a lot of it. I'm going to go even crazier. Let's go 14. Now I'm going to make my world black. So I'm going to click on the world tab, click the color here and drop it to black. And I might take this right here and make the ground black as well. But I'm going to turn down the roughness so that it's reflective. So it really starts to pick up the reflection of that monitor. I'll just play with this till it looks good. All right, so let's really land this image. I'm going to put in a light. And EV Emission is really great for creating kind of reflective light and stuff, but it's actually going to send actual light into the scene. So if I put a lamp here, so I'll go Shift A, light. Let's go for an area light. And I'll just position this thing. I'll turn on my widgets again so I can see. Rotate X, kind of down at the keyboard a bit. I can come here and just find the point where it starts to hit things. I'll turn it up. And I'll just kind of bring it forward so it's right there near the computer monitor itself. And I can give it a nice green color so that it matches and feels like it's casting light into the scene. Then what I can do is I can take my other lights and play around with them to create really cool mood and atmosphere. So I might take this one and give it a bit of color, like maybe a red or blue. I'll take this other light and I'll turn it up to something like 10 and give it a green color, I think. Slight green tint. And I'm going to rotate it and put it behind the monitor so it's this really dramatic shot. So R and Z, rotate my light right around, maybe so I get just a tiny pinprick there. And I can play with this saturation to really kind of get it looking super cool. All right, final step, let's put something on the monitor. We'll just do a little trick to make it look like it's on the monitor. I'm going to turn on my widgets again so I can see everything. And then I'm going to go Shift A and I'm going to grab a mesh, and we'll go for monkey. And I'll take the Suzanne monkey, I'll grab Z, and I'm going to enter edit mode, and I'll pop out of my camera, making sure I don't have camera locked to view anymore. And I'm going to come over here and look at her from the side. I'll switch to transparent mode so I can grab everything. And I will also switch to vertex mode, and I'll just box select. Actually, I'll grab these back ones. That's probably a good idea. Let's grab one of these back ones, and I'll just Control plus to expand the selection a little bit. I want to leave the ears intact, but I'm going to delete these. So I'm going to delete these vertexes. Then what I can do is come over here and we're going to grab the center point on each of the eyes. I'll turn transparent mode off so it's a little bit easier for me to grab. So I'll grab the center point, each of these, and Control plus to expand the selection out just like that, and then X, delete vertices. And we've got some eye holes. Now what we can do is hit S to scale, Y to lock on the Y axis, and then 0 to flatten Suzanne out. Now we can grab Y and just drag her back so that she's right in front of the monitor. And get that on there. All right, and there you go. We finished our model and our little shot. I hope you really enjoyed this and learned some cool things about hard surface modeling, materials, and how to make things look cool in Blender. If you enjoyed this tutorial, please hit that like button, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel as well. Ring the notification bell if you want to find out when I drop new tutorials. And consider joining the Patreon. There's a ton of extra content there. Also, you can join on YouTube if Patreon's not your thing. So you become a member here, you get access to hours of extra content that I've put up for YouTube channel members. It's the same over on Patreon, so you can get it both ways. But if you want the project files, like this project file, you can join up this month over on Patreon. Each month I cycle through new project files based on the tutorials, so go check that out. Hope you really enjoy it. Thanks again for watching. Let me know what you thought of this in the comments below. Let me know any tutorials you want to see in the future, and I'll be sure to see those. Thanks so much. I'll catch you in the next tutorial. Until then, see you later.